Bobby Bear. Bobby, how you doing?
I'm doing real good, Ralph, and never felt better in my life, and having a big time.
I was reading somewhere where you made your first guitar, and I never knew you were a carpenter.
I wasn't. You should have seen it, Ralph. It was an old coffee can with a stick of wood stuck through it and wires from a screen door. And it sounded like a Japanese instrument.
Now run this by me again.
Well, I would pretend like I was a singing cowboy or something, and I'd just flog on this thing. It would sound like one of those Oriental instruments, it'd just twang and flang.
You used wire from a screen door.
Mm-hmm. You know how you
Okay, and the
strip
coffee
wire.
can was the box.
Coffee can was the body.
What was the fretboard?
No fretboard. No fretboard. Just a hunk of wood, piece of kindling.
Would it actually play?
No, but it would if you had a great imagination, which I did.
Why in one of your old bios does it say he made his first guitar?
Well, record companies, when they do bios, if just about every country singer that I know, they were poor, grew up poor. So did the whole world, at that time. We were all poor. And in the 40s, everybody was poor. It wasn't like I was the only poor person that I knew. Everybody was. We didn't know the difference. I figured that was the way it was and the way it was always going to be. So it wasn't all that bad.
When did you finally get a guitar that you could call a real guitar?
It was when I was 16, 17.
What'd you pay for it?
I bought a D18 Martin.
Oh, you bought
time.
You bought an expensive guitar.
I talked my dad into co-signing for it, and I made the payments for a while, for a couple of years, and then I moved to California. And I think my dad had to finish paying it off. I never did really pay for it. My dad had to pay the note off, and I think eventually I paid him back.
What did it cost?
I think it was $125. It's probably worth a couple thousand now.
Have you still got it?
Oh yeah, I still got it. It's been stolen, returned, sanded off, busted, and for Christmas a couple years ago, Jeannie and my sister had it redone. It's really a top-notch guitar.
So it has a lot of sentimental value.
Oh yes.
Still play it?
Yeah, same one I used on All American Boy. It was one when Uncle Sam says, "Here I am."
Oh,
I was pecking on that old Martin. Sound like Bill Monroe talking about his mandolin, don't it?
I believe in past times you have told me that Marie Laveau was a real person.
Marie Laveau was a real person. She was she's a legendary witch that serviced mostly the rich people in New Orleans. And there's a lot of books written about her, bunches of them. I know the last time I came through the New Orleans airport, I saw on the book stands a lot of books on Marie Laveau. And she was very beautiful when she was young. Of course, like all of us, she got older, and
that's where our story picks up, isn't it?
And that's where we catch it.
Okay. Can you tell me whatever happened to Marie Laveau?
Well, Ralph, she died.
Well,
she got old and died.
During what era did she live?
I think it was the late 1800s. She, like I say, she.
Why did they call her a witch? Do you believe in witchcraft?
Because she did.
Do you believe in witchcraft?
Well, I don't know. I never did use it, so I can't recommend it. But apparently, a lot of people do, because a lot of people with a lot of money use Marie Laveau to cast spells on different people that in business deals.
Did she have a little doll that she stuck a pin in?
I guess she had everything it took. She did mixed up things, and she's very famous. I'll tell you one thing. I don't believe I would, whether I believe in witchcraft or not, I don't think I'd like to go up against or offend one.
Where did that song come from?
Sheldon Silverstein wrote it, and
I guess he had read some of the same books.
Right. He reads a lot of books, and he picked up on the Marie Laveau story, and on the record, Shell does the witch scream.
Oh, that's him.
That's him.
We did this show one time with Bobby Bear, and anytime you do Bobby, there are a lot of mentions of Sheldon Silverstein, who has written a lot of Bobby's hits. And he came with you. I remember.
I remember that.
He wouldn't be on. He would just sit over here and cackle and kibitz.
Yeah, he just kind of heckle us from the side.
Anything we'd say, he'd snicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Bob McDill was with us too that night. But Shell, he just sat over to the side and sort of, well, he would heckle us. He was a heckler.
On the back of your latest album, there's a reference to Shell. Says, to my friend Broadway Shell, come home, we miss you. What's that all about?
Well, Shell, I just spent a few days with Shell up in New York, and he's writing Broadway plays. He had one on last summer. Richard Dreyfuss played the lead in, and he's working on one now. Shell also last year did a children's book, which was a #1 bestseller.
I think it's still in the top 10, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's called A Light in the Attic, and very entertaining book.
He has written a lot of books for children, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Well, we were, Gene, me, and all the kids were going to Florida on vacation about 2 years ago, I think it was, and Shell gave me a whole roll of what eventually turned out to be the book, A Light in the Attic. And we decided to drive down. I have this van conversion, and so we just took our time and drove to Florida, and it kept the kids entertained all the way down and back. And I figure if something can do that, then it should be in book form.
It was the original manuscript.
Right. Uh-huh.
Sheldon Silverstein, I can't describe him on the radio and do a complete job. He is unlike any man I ever met in my life.
Right. The bald-headed guy with the beard that originally did cartoons for Playboy magazine.
And he wrote A Boy Named Sue.
And he wrote A Boy Named Sue, plus a lot of other records.
Waylon Jennings.
Waylon Jennings.
When the first time you met Waylon Jennings, do you recall that moment? What was he doing?
First time I met Waylon, we went out to dinner. He took me out to dinner, and then right after that, I was doing a show there in Phoenix, and we were. I'll tell you who was on the show. It was me, Glenn Campbell, Merle Haggard, Hank Snow was headlining the show. And I called Waylon and had him come over to my room. We had a guitar pulling all night long. And my room was, Glenn Campbell, Merle, Waylon. There's a couple more people. I can't remember who they were now because it did get late. And that's probably... And Waylon, it was daylight when he got home or after. So that's probably where he got the inspiration for women do know how to carry on.
Tell these people what a guitar pulling is.
Guitar pulling is where you have one guitar, and you have a room full of eager singers and songwriters that can't wait to get that guitar away from whoever's got it. Doesn't matter who's got it, because they've always got something that they think is as good or better. So that it's like as soon as somebody finishes a song, they say that's good, and they grab the guitar and pull it away from whoever has it, and they sing their songs.
Or if you think that's good, listen to this.
Right, and that's what makes for great songwriters.
Did Waylon impress you as having a lot of charisma when you first saw him work?
Absolutely, a tremendous amount. And he was only working with like two pieces. He was picking most of the lead and had a bass man and a rhythm man. That was it. He didn't have a drummer.
What is it? Is it Waylon Arnold or Arnold Waylon? He hates that name Arnold, I know.
I don't know.
I think it's Waylon Arnold.
Waylon Arnold.
Yeah, he said he hates that name because that was the name of the pig in the television show Green Acres.
There's no resemblance.
Bobby, you mentioned, and maybe this happens to all entertainers, you mentioned that you cry and moan about being on the road so much, and then when you get home you get restless and you got to get back out there. Tex Ritter, whom I used to work with, we were disc jockeys together, and he would play records on the air with me when he wasn't on the road, and I could always tell when he was getting itchy to get back out there. And as long as he had done it, he always had the itch to get back out on the road. I imagine the same applies to Bobby Bear.
Well, that's what I've always done, and probably always will do in one way or the other. But since I was a kid, I've always sang songs and people applauded, and that gets in your blood, and you got to have it, and you miss it.
You need that stimulant of the applause.
Well, you need to know that people like you, and for as long as I can remember, the gauge that I've used, if people like me or if they don't, has been applause when I sing a song. So it's like a psychological thing. You get used to it. And it's like addiction to drugs or something.
Got to have it.
Well, yeah, it's part of your psychological makeup, I guess psychiatrists would say, which I'm not. But
thank you, Dr.
It's hard to cut it. It's hard to stop it,
Thank you, Dr. Bear.
You're welcome. That'll be $100.
I guess every young country singer on his way up sings Hank Williams, doesn't he?
Yep, because he was, to me, he was the first one to really put energy into music, into country music, which I could identify with. And everybody that I know at the period of time whenever I was growing up, they did nothing but Hank Williams. I mean, it was like a fight if you was on a show with a bunch of people, who was going to sing Your Cheating Heart first.
Bobby, you mentioned in this series of interviews a number of times the word energy. You being the most laid-back singer I ever met, you who almost fall asleep on stage, what do you mean you're interested in energy?
Well, energy is very important. Now,
is it?
You can project.
Did you ever try it?
Sure, I have. Listen, we have the Pulley Bone and myself. We have a hot group.
Well, I know you surround yourself with some hot pickers.
You sure? Well, you have to.
But I'm surprised you don't go to sleep while they're picking.
No, you can't do that, Ralph. I'll tell you how it works. We go out and we play, and you get energy from the audience. And so I take that energy and I use it, and I throw it back out, and then I get more from the audience. And it's not unusual to have a real screaming, crazy crowd.
Do you get revved up as the show progresses? Do you get more energy?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. We always wind up really cranking it out.
Ready to go, yaha.
Right, and
leap off the stage.
Well, I don't go that far. I'd have to get back on some way.
Robert, what does Jeannie call you, Bobby Joe?
Sometimes she calls me Bobby Joe. Sometimes she calls me Bobby. Sometimes she calls me Bear.
Most of your friends in the industry just call you Bear, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Right, it's Bear.
Just get you on the phone. Hello, Bear.
Hey, Bear.
In fact, you had an album out a while back.
Yeah,
it's called Bear.
It's called Bear. And that was my first album for CBS after I left RCA.
When you were here a couple of years ago, you laid a little tune on me that turned out to be a single. I thought it was just cute, called The Food Blues.
That's right.
What's that line in there about the carcinogenics?
Let's see. Carcinogenics in it. And,
it's about water, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, in other words, in Food Blues, there is nothing, absolutely nothing you can eat that's good for you. Anything that you eat, anything that you put in your mouth, you can find a reason why you should not be eating that. Deadly red dyes, fat in this, and anything you eat will kill you.
Did Shell write that?
Oh, yeah.
I figured it had his touch. Bobby, you told me one time about, I guess I'm asking for an update of something you told me years ago about Bobby Bear impersonators. Does that still happen?
No, it doesn't. That only happened in the earlier part of my career, before I had albums, before I did a lot of TV. Now it's kind of difficult because
that was before the general public then knew what you looked
right,
like.
That's when that's when somebody could go around and say, "Hey, I'm Bobby Bear, and I'd like to buy this new car and get it." It works, a good con man can do that. And it happened in many, there was a guy in Omaha, I think it was, married a girl, and they had a kid, and she still thought that he was me, and at that time I'd never been in Omaha, and somehow the baby wound up in the hospital. It's kind of a sad story. The baby wound up in the hospital with a brain concussion or something, and through RCA, he had told her that he was on RCA and Chet was producing him. She located me one morning in Chicago. I was doing the NARM convention, and a bunch of RCA executives with 2 state highway patrolmen came knocking on my door at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I got the phone call from the girl, and she said, "Bobby," and I said, "Yes," and she said, "Well, it doesn't sound like you," and I said, "Well, it is." And she said, "No." She said, "Is somebody playing a joke on me?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not, but I think somebody is." And I never did really hear the end of how it actually ended. I should have followed up on that one, but
obviously you never met
no
the man.
I never met. If I did, I didn't know it. And but that was just one of them. The FBI almost got me once. When I living in L.A., some guy bought a brand new red Chevy convertible in Tucson and disappeared with it. And I guess he took it into Mexico, so it became a federal offense or something. But they caught me out at the office one day. And the only thing that saved me is the guy who had bought the car had a finger missing. So after 2 hours of talking, and it just happened, it was like one of these old movies. It just so happened that the air conditioning had gone off in the office that day, and it was like 100 degrees. And I was sweating, they were sweating, asking me questions real quick and fast on the phone. And this one guy was on the phone. He said, let me see your hands. I held up my hands, and he said, "Nah, it's the wrong guy," because the guy he was looking for had a finger missing.
Wait a minute, was he, what do you mean on the phone?
Oh, he was on the phone. The FBI guy was on the phone talking to somebody.
How could he?
He was getting a description.
Oh, I see. He was in the room with you using the phone,
right,
talking to somebody
in my
else.
office.
You've had some narrow escapes, haven't you, Mr. Bear?
I sure have.
Is that something that really scares the heck out of you when a guy comes in and says, "I'm with the FBI, I want to talk to you"?
It'd make your heart jump a little bit because you don't know where he's coming from.
You know, I rarely ever see you without that old floppy cowboy hat. Next thing I know, Don Williams, by the way, we've just booked him for one of our upcoming shows. If he walks in here with a little knit hat on, I'll know the world has gone crazy.
Well, I think he sleeps in his.
Am I correct? Did Don Williams get one of his hats from you?
I might have given him one. I think the first, the hat that he has used the most, that he got from when they did the movie.
Oh, you're right.
W.W. and Dixie.
W.W. and the Dixie
Right.
Dance Kings, an old Burt Reynolds picture that played.
Right. I know when I first met Don, he wasn't wearing a cowboy hat. I think that came after they did the movie.
Bobby, I was out at Conway Twitty's office the other day, and he showed me some old movie posters of pictures he did 20 years ago when he was a hot rock and roll singer. And he did a number of pictures, I don't know, 4 or 5. And the old posters were funny. I know you did a picture called "A Distant Trumpet" with Troy Donahue. But did you ever make any other old pictures?
No, I never really wanted to, Ralph. I didn't.
Did they ask you to be in those beach party pictures?
No, they always went for the pretty boys. I never was pretty enough for that. They always wanted Frankie Avalon or Fabian or somebody. I was not only not pretty enough for those, I was too country. They wanted
Well, you had a big pop hit back in those days. That's where they got on to you in the first place.
Right.
I assume they considered you to be a pop singer.
Right. That's one of the main reasons.
I'm thinking about "Shame on Me."
Right. That's actually, I was living in Hollywood during all this period of time. I was flying to Nashville to record, and I was beginning to be thought of as a pop singer from the West Coast. And I didn't move here until after I'd had "Shame on Me," Detroit City, 500 Miles, Miller's Cave, and 4 Strong Winds. That's when I moved to Nashville, because I didn't want to be thought of as a pop singer from the West Coast, because I knew how short-lived those careers were. I wanted to be what I was, a country singer. So that's why I moved here. But mainly, I always wanted to live in Nashville, and secondly, I wanted to come here and join the Grand Ole Opry and be a country singer, and what I did, and I consider myself fortunate to be able to do things like that.
Bobby Bare.